Okay, well, it is today, April the 20th, 8:31 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you're on the East Coast, it's 9:31. And if you're west of us, depending on whether you're in the West Coast, let's see, that might be 6:31. Rocky Mountain, 7:31. If you're in Alaska, I don't know what time it is. If you're in Hawaii, I don't know what time it is. But I do know one thing, it is time for us to start week 3 of constitutional law. I see my usual group here. Appreciate you guys coming out faithfully. I can tell you that there are a few things that I'm going to um, share with each and every one of you. And I'm going to make sure that you are brought up to date on some changes that I made to the course. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Sharing my screen. Okay, and I'm not going to be repetitious and go over things that I've already gone over in previous lectures, like the things you're looking at on the right here. But I am going to move down to this. This is where we are. First, your written assignment. Here's your rubric. You also had it emailed to you. Freedom of the press and a right to a fair trial, and how to get your 80 points. 30 points describe if you believe that the press has an effect on jury pools and a fair trial. Also explain the position using the First Amendment as the support that the press will use, and then satisfy the requirements of APA spelling, grammar, and punctuation for a total of 80 points. All right, and we'll go into that a little bit more in a little bit. Moving right along here, let's get to this, the relevant case law. Fourth Amendment includes case briefs, which you're familiar with how to do now, and citations related to the chosen area, synopsis of at least 3 secondary sources. Just remember, secondary sources are not considered, don't use your text. That means you can use law review articles, you can use websites, credible resources, not Wikipedia, people. And then you're going to meet the page requirement here, including correct spelling, grammar, punctuation, and of course, remember APA. So that's it for week 3. Now, I want to bring you up to speed about week 5. As you've seen already, many of you, that week 5 originally had the Fourth Amendment Project interview. And one of your classmates early on brought it to my attention, but leadership also and I collaborated and came together, and I wrote this assignment and provided the details. And here is the new uh, scoring rubric for this. Okay, that's the old one. This is the one you're not going to do. All right. So the project that that you're going to see, this is just the rubric itself. So I'm going to show you the project in a minute. So we're not going to do the interview. Remember that. Okay. Everything else is the same, except when you get to the part in week 6 where it says include an interview. Don't worry about that. We're factoring that out, actually. We're going to actually spread those points throughout this to weigh it, so it's a total 100. So you don't, when I grade it, don't worry about that. You will not be penalized for not having an interview, because it is not, I repeat, it is not any longer an assignment. But instead, here is the rubric for week 5. It's going to be based on the exclusionary rule. Okay. Now, and then here's the breakdown right here for a total of 100 points. I also sent it to you in email. All right. I also posted it in the announcement. So now let's go down to the live lecture again, reminding you that we're in week 3. All right. Which, by the way, when we finish week 3 and we go to week 4, and we get finished with week 4, should I say, I will no longer accept weeks 1, 2, and 3 unless there has been some extenuating circumstances that I am made aware of. I have to be made aware of that. All right. So now let's go over to the other side here. All right. So let's start at the top, because this is where we have the alternate. Okay, so now here is the rubric that I just talked about a few minutes ago on the Fourth Amendment exclusionary rule, with the breakdown on how you're going to be graded for this assignment. It was supposed to be in the assignment section, uh, but they haven't put it in yet. So the new dean rather, for the School of Justice Studies that I talked about last week, she and I discussed it, and I says I need to get it out there for my students. And so that's why we did it. Here is the assignment. This is it. I emailed it to you as well. And this is information up here. This is the Fourth Amendment. This is the 14th Amendment. This is some history behind the exclusionary rule. And then these are some, I actually helped you out. I did research for you already, pretty much, to make it easier for you. I could have just told you that there are several landmark cases and then throw it out there. But no, I gave you actually the key ones. And the 2014 one is one of the most interesting ones that you'll see, because that involves a cell phone. You all can all relate to that. But these are all cases that are very, very popular. Okay. You read about Riley versus California yesterday. Is that what you're saying? Or the cell phone case? That's what you said, Shakira. Oh yeah, yeah. That's I like. It's something I said. Ooh, well, I said. Well, everybody's gonna probably like that one. But anyway, try to not all do that one. But at any rate, these are the leading cases. When I was in law school, I studied cats. The rest of these, I didn't study in law school because I graduated in 1978. Okay, I did when I was practicing deal with Evans, Arizona versus Evans. And by the time these others came out, I had retired, but I still maintain my ability to be able to keep up to date on the law, because that's one of the things that I turned into a hobby after I retired. But I didn't know I would be a professor in 2011, and sure enough, it comes in handy. So anyway, these are cases that have taken place since that time. Now, there may be other cases that come after 2014, because that's a 6-year gap. However, you should be aware of the fact that Supreme Court cases are cases that are easier for you to grasp and get a hold of. And one other thing about Supreme Court cases that you should be aware of, and I'm referring to U.S. Supreme Court cases, is that they cover the whole country. They don't just cover a state. Okay, so that's why I did that, because you might find some cases that locally that might be a little different, adding another spin. Try to refrain from using those because of the fact that they're still not, how should I say, they haven't reached the apex. When they reach the United States Supreme Court, then it comes out anywhere from 5-4 or majority to all the way up to 9-0, which you don't see a lot of those. But when you see one of those, that's extremely definitive. And then I brought to your attention that there are many exceptions. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but I didn't want to bog you down with trying to find an exception. I gave you some exceptions, okay? And I gave you 5 of them, and you'll have to um, discover about information about them. Now, here's what your assignment is. You are to research one or more of the cases provided above and pick at least one exception. No, I just gave you 5. And prepare a 2-page, paper, the way you usually prepare papers, double spaced, all right, APA formatted. In this paper, I want you to provide the details of the exclusionary rule and how it applies to the Fourth Amendment. Present your position as to whether you think the exclusionary rule is good or bad for the criminal justice system. Support your position using the research you perform to complete this assignment. Check your grammar, spelling, and use APA. And then this is the usual information that you're familiar with about how to do it with the Dropbox. Any questions about the week 5 course project? I think I made it extremely clear. See, I wrote this one. Some of the other ones you might be confused about. I think mine is pretty straightforward. Not patting myself on the back. I have people back here doing that for me. So that's a LOL. That's a LOL. Okay. Any questions about it? Let's see what's in the chat box. Week 5 looks like it could be done right away. Is that I don't care, but you don't want to jump over. You don't want to jump over. If you do week 4, and that's in a way, I have students that did. I had a student last time that did the whole quarter in 2 weeks. I told that student that was good, but bad. The bad part about it is that you learn this. That's a cram thing. So yeah, and you know why? Because you're anxious to get to it, because you see that this is the best organized and written assignment that you have seen in this. Well, I'm not going to review them before time. I'm not going to do that because of the fact that I already got enough. Do you know I have 35 of you guys in this one class? I got another class that introduction to corrections. I have 30 in, and then I have about 100 students. Pretty close to that. So it's hard. So anyway, all right. So anybody have any other questions? I see Shakira is typing away. Anybody have any questions? No. Oh, what's a lot of reading and grading? You mean if I have to do look at it and then uh, yeah, 100 students. Yeah, that is. It is. You're right. It is, but that's okay. I'm cool with that. I I know what I'm looking for, and I try to give you a clue about what I'm looking for. It's usually generally found in the rubric, and that's why I always stress using the rubrics. I'm not a hard teacher to understand. I'm a very easy teacher to understand. I'm a rubrics, not the rubrics cube, but rubrics professor, and I get my students to understand that. So, but that week 5, is that week 5? Now remember, you got another week 5 assignment that's not changed, but I'm talking about the course project, taking out the interview. Is that pretty clear to everybody? I see a few people said yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. I think you're going to enjoy that one too. I remember when I was learning about the exclusionary rule later on, then you'll hear about this thing called fruit of the poisonous tree. You'll run across it, and just a little side thing. I started to throw that into here, but I said, no, I'm not going to overload you guys with that. Okay. All right. So that's it for week 5. Now remember, we're just at week 3 at this particular point. All right. But I wanted to make sure that you are well aware. I did, like I said again, email each of you and wanted you to know how important that this was. All right. If they do put it in the module, don't be confused by it. You already got a heads up. So now let's look at our week 3 announcement. Okay, let me close up the chat now because it kind of, okay, there we go. So week 3 announcement this week that we are in week 3, starting as of yesterday. Well, when I say yesterday, today is actually the first day, but a lot of people get a jump on it on Sunday nights because it pops up in the announcement section where you can actually see it. There are announcements that are written for the whole course already that I've already prepared that you won't see until a certain period. So in this week, we're dealing with protecting basic freedoms. Chapters 5 and 6 of your textbook, along with the PowerPoints that I sent to you, and then the additional stuff, and then deal with the First Amendment and gun control. Your discussion assignment this week about gun control. I remember when I taught the 11-week class, there was 1 week that was the whole module was about gun control, and I was able to talk about gun control. And I'll just maybe touch on it a little bit tonight because I don't want to try to keep you too long here. We're already at 8:49 here, so we're going to try to go till 9:30ish and get you out of here. Finally, complete the written assignment, freedom of press, and the right to a fair trial. I talked about that. And then your Fourth Amendment project, relevant case law, and midterm exam, which reminds me, I gotta make sure, let me make a note before I forget to fix week 5 announcement concerning course project. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna fix that after I get finished with you guys for the day. So anyway, and then complete. There's going to be a midterm exam. So you got the freedom of the press and Fourth Amendment, and then you have the midterm exam. Now, remember this: it is time. You utilize the information that you learned in the previous weeks with the activities. Make sure you utilize that. The PowerPoints that you have been given in weeks 1 and 2, that should be really beneficial so you don't have to go back and reread. But the PowerPoints have a lot of that information in there. And then if you've done the assignments, you're going to be familiar with what to expect. Don't worry, don't sweat it. You guys should be okay. I do recommend waiting until Sunday to do it. There are some people that like to jump on it right away. More power to them. And like I said again, it is timed. At this junction, you guys are familiar with timed exams. And these are all due this Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then at your convenience, complete the mid-quarter student survey. Then you know about my motto. Okay? Let's go now to the course tools. We're at the course calendar. As you can see, this is where we are here. So we're at the live lecture. Your initial post is due tomorrow, 11:59 p.m. And then your reply post is here. Did anybody notice anything different this week about discussion posts that did not happen in weeks one, that happened differently in week 1 and 2? Yep, exactly, as one. That's what you're used to anyway. But yeah, you have that. Do you know why? Yeah, they decided to do that, which made sense. You know why, right? Yeah, that basically you have 3 written assignments, and you're right. The quiz or midterm, whatever way you want to perceive it, the bottom line is because of the fact that they include that as well as a summary of what. And I think the way that I've been approaching it with you guys, you should be well prepared for what to expect as far as the midterm exam. If you um, get nervous and you want a life jacket, just you know what to do. Call me, text me, email me. I had a student that called me, I think it was yesterday. She called me about 10 o'clock at night, and she apologized. And I said, I'm going to light into you. I says, this is not the 25th hour today, because she started apologizing for calling me on late Sunday night. I says, if you called me the 25th hour today, then you should be apologizing. But then I wanted to know how that conversation would have occurred anyway. A little laugh out loud thing there. But on a serious tip, um, the school calls me Mr. Student Professor because I'm an advocate for my students. And yep, that I am. All of you know that by now because you got, I jokingly says, you have the lashes on your back from me in previous classes, yet you came back for some more punishment. That's another laugh out loud. Okay. I'm kind of I'm laughing today just to let you guys know to keep from crying. And I'm crying because I got some personal issues that I'm facing. Um, I got a brother-in-law who, well, he's like a brother. 40 something years he's been married to my sister, almost 50 years, and he and I are the same age, and he's in hospice because of stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and we can't get to him. He's at home, so um, it's a tough one for me. So I'm kind of uh, eh, doing my work, and especially doing my lectures, give me a chance to dialogue. So keep me in your prayers uh, concerning that issue. So it's, and then I've had a few friends that I lost to COVID-19 that are uh, younger than me, you know. But anyway, um, it's a toughie, guy, especially when I have the load that I have working. But the good part about it is I'm at home. And anyway, enough rambling. So keep me, you know, yep. Every one of us in this class could talk about family members that have all of a sudden been just, I call it snatched away by this COVID-19. I am very concerned about one thing. I will say this is that, and I don't care if you're one of those people, then I'm sorry. Um, but talking about how we have rights and we should be able to get out and do what we want to do. You know, good people, one of the things I always tell people is health is the #1 factor in a quality of life. And wealth, in terms of money, is not. You can have a lot of money, but if you have poor health, it don't mean a hill of beans. And so, you know, I just people just have to chill out and listen to what the professionals. Dr. Fauci, I love him. I think he's very smart. He knows what he's doing, you know. And let's see, I want to see some of these comments here because these looks like some pretty good ones. I still don't have anyone in my life who has gotten good, at least not confirmed. Two should have gotten a test. Yeah, well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that. Um, uh, Shakira lost a friend and his mom. Yeah. Thank you, Michelle, and you, Junior, and everybody on this. So you know that you guys are actually my outlet. You guys are actually a part of my family. Probably most professors don't share stuff like that, but I'm very transparent with my class and my students. And my students are a part of me and remain a part of me, you know. Uh, so it's the way you got it. Sorry, guys, that's the kind of professor you got, like it or not. Yeah, but yeah, prayers to everyone who has lost. Yes, absolutely, because like I said, it's um, it's tough. So anyway, so let's get further into this stuff here. Let's see. I've given you the course calendar. Oh, I do want to remind you again that the course does absolutely end on May the 17th. I'll do this every week so that no one will be caught by surprise. If you miss that in one lecture, you get it in another lecture. The 17th is it. So basically, what you should be aware of is that you've got assignments that are due the 26th. That's when your next group of assignments, and then your assignments after that are due the 3rd. I won't be doing any grading on the 3rd because I'll turn 70. Yay! Okay. Okay, that's why I'm obeying what these doctors are saying so I can make it past that and then some. And then you'll see after, uh, you know, thank you. Well, you'll see once you get past the 3rd, then you only have 2 more Sundays left, that and then the course will be over. So that's why I'm bringing it into you, to keep it in perspective. Okay, anybody have any questions thus far? Okay, okay, all right. All right, let's get into week 3. By the way, I haven't had a chance to look at your briefs. I'm anticipating that you guys did really well with those briefs. Um, I kind of, as a law librarian, as I was telling you before, as a person who was a law clerk with paralegal, I'm a professional at looking at briefs. I can do a grade your briefs in 30 to 60 seconds, and a minute a brief actually, because of the fact that I know what I'm looking for, and you know, you guys, um, I'm anticipating really good stuff, especially with that. And remember how you use the brief. You're going to use it after that. And by the way, you're going to probably keep that technique for future classes as well, particularly the deeper you get into the law aspects of it. All right, let's look at the assignments here. So I've already talked about this. So now that you have researched the Fourth Amendment and chose your area of focus, the next step is to work on your in-depth research into your specific area. Now, remember what your specific area was. You chose that during your first week, week 2, which was last week. All right. Find the relevant case law and secondary sources. Remember what I said with case law. you pretty much want to stick to United States Supreme Court cases. And please, 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 when you cite your cases, cite them according to the way that I give them to you. The name, X versus Y, and then it'll have a number, and then it'll say US, and then it'll have a number after that. That first number stands for the volume of the publication. The second stands for the page where the case starts. And then in parentheses, you will see the year that the case was handed down from the United States Supreme Court. But try to stick with those right there. Again, very, 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 very important for your understanding how the law operates. Secondary sources, as I said earlier, are the news articles, academic journals. I was talking about law journals to discuss your amendment or case. You can use websites, but remember, try not to use websites that law firms have done. Don't use law firm websites because those are just opinions. Use the journals, and you can find news articles that are researched out as well. And so you want to use this project, and then you're going to, boom, brief the cases. I don't know how to do that. Well, that means you messed up in week 2. I'm kidding. So that you can refer back to it at a later time. And see, what briefs do is they get you to a habit of a synopsis of the case, and you learn really quickly. There's about 6 sections that are important. Remember, I always say that concurring and dissenting opinions, if they are provided, are very important for future changes in the law. And so you always want to. So let me go to, I have to do this way because I close out the chat. So if I choose to be secure against unreasonable search and seizure, does that mean we find a case? No, that's not really a topic. That's really a part of the Fourth Amendment, because the whole Fourth Amendment involves that. Remember what I had talked about the topic during week 2. I think we talked about equal protection and the issues that are involved there. So you could pick a topic other than the one for your written assignment for week 5. Okay, but you should have done that already during week 2. That should have been done by week 2. And I have already graded you, or should I say, I will be grading you on that coming up in the next few days. So don't take that language to be secure against unreasonable searches and seizures, because that's what the whole Fourth Amendment is all about. Okay? No. Reasonable search and seizures is what the whole thing is all about. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. Well, again, it depends on, if you did that, you had to pick an area that elaborated on what that means. You could use that, but you had to pick an area about, okay, what does that mean in terms of an area? I talked about that during week 2 lecture. I talked about that. The Fourth Amendment. Okay. The Fourth Amendment involves, like I said again, unreasonable searches and seizures. Okay, I'll give you just an idea of some. Stop and frisk. Um, let's see. That's one big area. Stop and frisk. All right. So that's one. And the reason why the Fourth Amendment is expanding the 14th Amendment is because the Fourth Amendment, as was originally written, you are correct, is because the Fourth Amendment, as originally written, only applied to the federal system of law, not to the states, the individual states. But if you read the 14th Amendment, you see in the 14th Amendment, let me go to it for just a minute so you can see what I'm talking about. It's right in here in our assignment. I'll show you. It says, look at this is the 14th Amendment. And so this is the Fourth Amendment, okay? The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, effects against unreasonable search and seizures. So notice that I said, if you talk about being unreasonable search and seizures, are you talking about from them individually? Were they stopped in their cars? Was this a search that was done at somebody's house? Was a search that was illegal that violated the Fourth Amendment? I just gave you some ideas. Papers and effects. Any of the property seized without due process of law. Okay, no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause. Support, you could talk about warrant issuance and what probable cause is, what reasonable suspicion is. I'm just throwing out some things to you now, since you asked that. No, that would have been the time for week 2, but last week. But anyway, you got it now? Now, let me show you to answer Michelle's point and confirm what she just said is correct. So notice what it says in this Fourth Amendment. It says nothing about the states. Now, people assume, don't use that word ever in terms of getting anything done. Assuming is a bad thing because then you have no fact. I like to operate on fact. And so what has happened is that the 14th Amendment had to be passed. And notice what it says. You tie these two together. It is not just, that applies, what it did was 14th Amendment tied the first 10, the freedom of press, religion, the Second Amendment dealing with weapons and so forth. The third, the fourth, which is what we're talking about. The Fifth Amendment, self-incrimination. The sixth, right to speedy trial, the right to counsel. The seventh and the Eighth Amendment. Notice I'm jumping across because I'm going with the criminal ones. The eighth is cruel and unusual punishment, dealing with that. So it applies all of these now to every single state by the 14th Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons. Notice it says the same thing starting out. Against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath and affirmation, particularly, you know what? Richard Wright, you did that wrong. I gotta fix that because I gave you the exact same thing twice. Glad I'm reading this. Okay, let's do this. Let me do this. I'm gonna fix this up. I'm gonna go back and fix this. So this second part of the assignment, nobody brought that to my attention. As I'm reading this, I'm saying that's the exact same thing. The 14th Amendment is different. So I will say this to you. Let's go back to, let me go to the 14th Amendment. Just put it in here. Okay, here we go. This is what it says. This is what I got. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state thereof they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law that abridges the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of the life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. Okay, so I'm gonna fix that so that's what I mean by the 14th Amendment. And nobody brought that to my attention that I gave the same thing twice. Everybody got it? Okay. And this is something different that you don't have to deal with. But the first section is the one, this is something totally different. All right. But the section 1 is the part that we're dealing with here that ties the Fourth Amendment to the state. Thank you for raising that question because I never would have realized that, and nobody probably never would have said anything. But I'm surprised. You guys are real sharp. I don't know how y'all missed that one. So everybody got it? Okay. I gotta fix that. Fix 14th Amendment. All right. Any questions about that now? Okay. So I'm going to change this right here, this second one, and change that to what I just showed you a few minutes ago. So next time you see it after today, it will have that in there. All right. I saw something in there. Let's see. Okay, good. All right. Okay. That's what happens when I'm so busy trying to keep grades up. And then they threw this at me and says, we need to do week 5, get this done. And nobody wanted to step up to the plate and do it. So I did. So my bad on this, but uh, I'm glad we got it caught. So, all right. You guys are good anyway. Okay. So back to where we were. Let's get back to that. Okay, so now let me get rid of this right here for now because it's in the way. Okay, so now find the relevant case law and you know what to do in terms of that. So briefing, I told you the importance of that. So for this assignment, as I showed you in the rubric, submit the case brief, including their proper case citations that you've chosen to use for your final project. Now remember, this is when I want to see you actually utilize what you learned in week 2 about case briefing in terms of your research. And you could have one or more cases, write a synopsis about a paragraph long on at least 3 of your secondary sources. I already told you what those are up above. And then your paper should be read properly and punctuated. And remember, APA should automatically go with that, citations in the body and references at the end. All right. Any questions about this assignment? Again, due Sunday the 26th. So we're good here on module 3, relevant case law. Yes. Yes. Okay, good. Now let's talk about the the written assignment, freedom of the press, and the right to a fair trial. Every person tried to a crime in a court of law has a right to a fair trial. Um, and the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution, which I referred to a few minutes ago, that the trial must be public, number one, except in what kind of cases where the trials don't have to be public. Anybody know? There we go. Yay. Um, those are, I think Katie Ann is in the juvenile probation, I think. Am I right? Am I right? No, no. I know what you're doing. I know you're going through the interview process, but I think, haven't you indicated that that's an area that you desire to work into? Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. See, I got you. And so anyway, yeah, so it is public, and the people can come in. Under the First Amendment, the press enjoys freedom of press. So in other words, the First Amendment allows the individuals who are in the media to report what's happening in court cases. And now they're assisted by the fact that now we have cameras and we have court TV, and then, it's not just the super cases, even though, however, most of the television cases that you see are like Casey Anthony, O.J. Simpson. Here we had the Laquan McDonald case, Jason Van Dyke in our area, and you've had those various ones in your jurisdictions where they're covered as well. So in a 1 or 2 page paper, answer the following using the First Amendment to support your position. Do you believe that the press have an effect on jury pools? Okay, I'm going to go back to your questions. And therefore denying the defendant a right to a fair trial. If so, how and why not? Support your positions. Don't just throw a statement out there. I feel. You know what? Feelings are good, but we need some support for your feelings. Something that can uh, take a position that we can see and deal with. Your paper should be proofread and so forth and so on. Okay, so now let me see what the chat says here. Uh, yeah. Uh, yeah, she'll be fine. Uh, yes, interview on the 5th. Okay, you're not talking about the Fifth Amendment. No, I'm messing with you. You're talking about the 5th of May, right? Isn't that what you said, Katie Ann? I think I saw that already. I think I saw it on Facebook or someplace that you put it out there. So anyway, you'll be fine there. Yep. Okay, cool. All right. So anyway, that's the assignment. Any questions about that one? Okay. So then moving right along, you got your gun control, um, and then the gun control issue. And then what would you suggest the legislators do, take into account both sides of the debate? I was in a seminar some years ago when Illinois was one of the last states to have carry conceal voted on, and they passed the law. And I remember sitting in the room, and the state's attorney was providing details of the new law. And on one side of the room were the pro-gun people or the NRA local affiliates, and on the other side were those who dealt with handgun control. And it was so volatile, and it was just, it was really amazing. And then how people are operating with guns. I'm not going to get into a heavy discussion about gun control because like I said, it's a whole nother module that you can discuss. And all I will generally say is this, is that gun control usually operate on the basis of your personal experience in life. I am anti-gun. And one of the reasons I'm anti-gun is because my adopted mother, not my natural mother, but my adopted mother, in 1971, before she legally became my mother, but she was in my life, the one I talked about, Mary D, that became a television personality in Chicago, was kidnapped and shot and left for dead. And her guest that she had with her died, and it was a miracle that she lived. She even has fragments of the lead in her body as we speak right now, and she will be 80 something years old, heading toward 90 in October of this year. but she can't take a MRI because if she does, then that lead in her begins to bounce around inside her body, and they found out because she accidentally they accidentally didn't check that for her. But anyway, so I'm against it, and there are many people who, based upon those gun shootings like Parkland, going all the way back, dealing with Sandy Hook, and going all the way back to Columbine. If you don't know about Columbine, then you could research it, but many of you know about Columbine, and there's a whole prodigy of gun issues. The shooter that took place in Vegas, and the fact that semi-automatic weapons are, are allowed to be used now. Um, Back in the days when I was a kid, the gangs didn't have access to those. They had regular six shooters, but now they have these high-powered weapons that they bump stock and do things to make it rapidly fire and these kinds of things. So people go back and talk about what the Second Amendment says, and if you read it in the context of the way it was written, the Second Amendment was really written uh, for purposes of protecting us, the militia, the military, and things like that. There are people who will definitely try to take me to task on that Second Amendment issue. So I have a right to my gun. I say, well, and then the other thing is in anticipating that when the Second Amendment was written, it never anticipated handguns because they weren't used in that time. It was rifles and so forth. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. So anyway, you're about gun control and the Second Amendment. That's a whole another topic. We can't use that for your research project because that's not a Fourth Amendment issue. Any questions about the discussion posts for gun control? Okay, I always have a lot of fun looking at what the positions that people are. A lot of people are hunters, and I said, well, yeah, that's fine, but I don't own a handgun. I only owned a handgun for 4 years, and that's because I was a police officer. And when I got away from that, 93, I went and sold my guns for hardly any money because you didn't get much for it because I didn't need them around. I didn't need them around. Um, let's see what she says. I think I know what she said. You could easily make a paper or discussion post about updating the Second Amendment. Well, you could do that in this. This discussion post allows you to do that. If you read it, it pretty much says that you can do that. Look at what it says. It says, uh, how would you deal with the gun control? Would you suggest our legislators uh, do to resolve this problem, taking account both sides in your answer, and so forth? Yeah, so you can do that with this. You don't have to have a total another assignment. This is exactly the assignment that you could do that with. Okay, so I look for some very interesting responses to that. All right, moving right along, and the quiz. I already talked about that, so you know what the deal is. Just remember, you can't have little stickies. You see these little things here. You can't have these little post-it notes all over the place when you take it. That's wrong. Uh, Can I think I saw something that I say. I know I can't. Uh, no, they don't have that in here. Okay. All right. All right. You scared me, Junior. Okay. All right. Yeah, like I remember one time a professor told me this, and one of my colleagues, he said that he was discussing the quiz with his class, and then he accidentally exposed the quiz in his live lecture. And I said, dag, now they got it. But no, we're not going to do that. I know you know that. You're just messing with me. Okay. So you'll know what to do with that. And then, of course, your live lecture. All right. So probably now let's get into the lecture. I've pretty much done the lecture on what we're going to talk about by how the way I've handled this discussion so far. So um, dealing with gun control, we've kind of talked about that and the First Amendment. And these are the assignments, but we're going to just go over and just kind of comment again. So here we go. Um, that Congress shall make no law of respecting or, this is the First Amendment. That's really what it is. And then we're dealing with obscenity in Miller versus California. This is a leading case that came out in '73. This was before I went to law school, and we studied this and took this apart in my constitutional law class. And I'll never forget what one of my professors one time said. He said that if it is something that has no artistic, and this is what he took some of the language, no artistic value, and it just appeals, that he says, to the prurient interest. And we had a whole discussion about what that meant, prurient interest. And here's what prurient interest meant. He said, not that you're prude, because there are people that are prude, but if there's no artistic value in it at all, none, zero, and it is just plain old there to excite you, arouse you in a sexual manner, then it's considered as obscene. And if you look at it, it says whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find that work taken as a whole, and I'm not talking about people from the religious perspective, appeals to prurient interest, but whether the work depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct designed and defined by the case law, and whether the work taken as a whole, this is the key thing, now you can't take part of it, lacks any serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So that's what it means. So the First Amendment would protect that. But if there is, and the states can limit that, okay? So the First Amendment values are adequately protected by the decision of Miller, okay? And then we talk about pornography and stuff like that. Again, remember, one of the things that pornography is designed not to do is to get in the hands of minors, and using children. It's a no-no, and that's about all pretty much I need to say concerning that, except the Farber case. The Ferber case uh, held that the states can have more rigorous regulations. So each state is given some autonomy. And so when it comes to that, the Miller test uh, it protects children more. That's pretty much if the Ferber case was designed to protect children. And there's the citation for the case, 458 U.S. 747, and it came out in 1982, a few years after I started practicing law. So the key thing is to protect children. That's what the Ferber case is all about. On guns, as I already talked about that, is that, notice what it says. It says a well-regulated militia being necessary to security of a free state, the right of people to keep their arms shall not be infringed. What a lot of people did was they cut off the first half and they just read the second part. But you got to remember something, good people. You got to read material in the context in which the author intended it. And I did a lot of research. My degree was in poli-sci or political science. And my conclusion to the Second Amendment came about even before what happened to my adopted mother. But and even before a lot of these school shootings took place, just based upon my research as a political science major. And actually I did, um, and it was a long time ago. I don't even know where the heck it is. Uh, I don't even know where to find it. I did some research and did a paper involving the Second Amendment while I was in college. Remember, I graduated from college in 1975. So I don't think the school doesn't maintain those. It would be nice because it'd be in the library. But the point of the matter is that I kind of took the part to see, oh, they intended for guns to be for the security of us. So who should be able to carry guns based upon that? Law enforcement people, the National Guard, the military, and so forth. Now, people said, yeah, but criminals get guns, so we got to arm ourselves. Y'all don't know how to shoot that good. And that's, anyway, there's a whole another discussion, so I'm going beyond that. But look at what it said here. With the recent high school shootings, Gabrielle Giffords, who was shot, uh, and then the recent shooting of Travion Martin, and then we could go back even to Hinckley, John Hinckley. You all know about the John Hinckley shooting, right? With uh, President Reagan and Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, um, Robert F. Kennedy, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And I know of a judge in a courtroom in Illinois, in Cook County, where a defendant came in a wheelchair. Hutchie Lee Moore was this guy's name, and he shot and killed an attorney, and he shot Judge Gentile. You can Google that and you can check that out. And so, you know, you got metal. I did an editorial for the local ABC affiliate, which uh, somebody in my family still has copies of it. Let me see, pull it up, but it was on VHS and like to convert it. But I talked about in that editorial, it was in '84, I believe it was. I talked about how metal detectors will be in schools, how it'll be in stores, and how it will be everywhere, even now heading toward churches. With and we're talking about that church shootings and things like that. So there's a whole lot of issues that are up in the air concerning this. Um, the question is, how important is the right to bear arms um, when this right pulls guns in the hands of the wrong people? See, and you should be aware of this. When I was a police officer, that and I'm about to end here. When I was a police officer, I remember we used to stake out this place called Dick's Gun Shop. It was in Dalton, Illinois, and we used to sit and we would have unmarked cars and we would watch individuals go in, and they would come out with more than one gun. Well, you weren't supposed to have more than one. And then secondly, there were times when we were inside the store making purchases ourselves just to see what was going on, and that the gun shop was selling uh, gangs guns. And what they would do is they would get people who had clean backgrounds to go in and purchase the guns, and and so it's a whole myriad of things. Guns are now showing up in grammar schools. Kids are bringing guns to grammar schools. I'm talking about not middle schools. I'm talking about grammar schools. That would be K through fifth. So it's a whole issue, and so anyway, so it's important to examine both sides of this debate. Those that support the right to bear arms want the ability to protect themselves, but like I said, I haven't had to use a gun to protect myself in my 69 years, nearly going on 70, and I had to pull my gun one time on someone or twice on someone. I pulled it during my raids when we were operating, doing drug raids, but I didn't have to pull it on too many suspects and so forth. And so the key thing is that uh, what's happening is people are being killed by guns. Now, what's surpassed killing people with guns now is something else. Does anybody know what kills more people than guns now? You should know this from a class that I taught. Does anybody remember what killed more people now than guns? Nope. Yep. There you go, Adam. Drugs and crime. I said that in that. Yep. Drugs, and I talked about that dealing with the Senate bill. Uh, I think it's 3023 that I shared with you guys when I was teaching that class, and it is actually, yeah, 3023. I got it in my hand here, and you guys have that or should be aware of that because I talked about that in others. So anyway, the fact of the matter is that guns are used to kill people. They're not used for hunting. Let's see, it's crazy how young kids get violent these days. A fifth grader, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. See, so we're in a world today where, so I mean, here's the deal. I'll give up some of my rights to save lives. And then, of course, it talks about that every jurisdiction, again, remember, the 14th Amendment allows states to do things, but they cannot violate the Fourth Amendment. And so Illinois firearm identification cards, also called FOID, if you want to own a gun, and concealed weapons. And now you have a lot of workplace shootings. You're familiar with those. Florida, on the other hand, uh, does not require a FOID card or any other type of permit. You know, I throw my hands up about Florida. I really do. Some of the things that are taking place, like this opening up the beaches and stuff like that. And anyway, that's I have some issues with the law in Florida. I really do. And you know, it says, let's see, what was it Michelle asked? Can a Wisconsin resident obtain an Illinois FOID card? I don't think so. I think you have to be a resident to get the FOID card. It's been so long since I looked at that. You can look at that, but I don't think so. Why? Because it's right across, you cross right over the border, right? Because it's so close to it. Like, for example, if you're Kenosha, Wisconsin, or yeah, someplace like that. Um, well, let me ask this question. Can you have fireworks legally in Illinois, even though in Indiana they're legal? And if you're an individual who's in Indiana, you can, but if you bring it to Illinois, you can get it confiscated and go to jail. So that kind of depends on what the jurisdiction says. I think that it's intended to protect the residents of the jurisdiction where they reside. That's redundant what I said, but you know, you might have. Like I said again, the whole idea about an FOID card, and I don't have one anymore. I told you I had one during that period. But and then with this carry conceal thing, um, is a whole lot of variations there. I can say that uh, Wisconsin has been very liberal. I don't know, does Wisconsin require FOID card? Yeah, well, then that's kind of the same thing. But yeah, well, that's because the carry conceal law is totally different. That now allows you to carry a gun on your person, but it's concealed. Did you all know that Texas is not a carry conceal state? It's an open carry, and that people can walk around like the wild, wild west down there. Did you know that? Anybody know that? Yeah, yeah. And I just kind of like it. Just kind of like make me, South Dakota's like that. Yeah. See, like I said again, every state, you know, yeah, yeah. So anyway, the bottom line, take a look at, what your state requires and how it compares. So that's about it for today. Um, any questions? I got my work cut out to fix some stuff. Uh, any guesses at any guesses at what the key phrase would be? Okay, that's a good guess, but that's not it. Ooh, gosh, you all are good. Shakira, you won the prize. It is Fourth Amendment. That is exactly it. You know, I'm very predictable, and I'm happy to say that. Is that usually what I spend most of the week, the lecture about in that week, is generally where my head goes in terms of Fourth Amendment. The key phrase. But yeah, it's Fourth Amendment. That's it. Very good. Very good. And you can predict. You're welcome. Anybody have any questions or comments? Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Well, again, I want to encourage you. I'm glad. Um, Stay safe, guys. Remember, don't, where, I don't know if your jurisdictions have reached the stage, but almost everybody is getting towards wear a mask and gloves. Um, this is no joke. This is some serious stuff, people. And, it's interesting that our program, Criminal Justice, has been online. Yeah, we'll send the PowerPoint. Okay, that's why I've mentioned you have the coinciding. That's why I give you guys the PowerPoint. There's no one thing that you can focus on. Uh, but I will tell you this, there's a lot of Fourth Amendment stuff in there. That's about close as I can give you. Remember, this is constitutional law. Okay, always get to the PowerPoints and take a look at them a little at a time. Remember, like I said, this is just Monday. Okay, it's not due until Sunday, so that's not a big deal. So, but you'll find those kinds of issues. Anything else before I let you go? But again, please take the precautions to stay safe. Um, last thing I'm going to say is, back to my sister's situation. Uh, one of my nephews, her son, is coming in from Arizona, and he's not wearing a mask out there, and she's very upset about him even coming there because the immune system already for my brother-in-law is bad enough with what he's dealing, and then my sister, she's been pretty sick herself as well. And so what people don't realize is that you can be a carrier even though you might not feel it, but you can uh, put it on with somebody else. So anyway, that's about it. So stay safe, and I'll see you guys next week. And look, well, you guys already know what the key phrase is. Matter of fact, some of you already have probably typed it in before I even get to it. And again, your recording will be up in the next, day or so, depending on how quickly they are able to give me access. So good night, and I'll see you next week.